Marta, 53, always had a stable financial life. But after losing her job and caring for her sick father, she found herself deep in debt. Accustomed to a comfortable routine, she never imagined she would need to sell her car and ask her daughter for help buying medication. This story shows how bankruptcy doesn't choose a profile. It knocks on the door, even of those who have always been organized. A reflection on how, at 50, many face the most silent crisis of their lives, the fear of not being able to start over. The video exposes common mistakes made in middle age and teaches how to rebuild even after the fall. The warm breeze that once caressed Palm Springs, California, now felt like an icy gale to Marta. At 53, her life, built on pillars of stability and comfort, crumbled without warning. The email, short and impersonal, informing her of her layoff, was a punch to the gut, a blow that reverberated through every cell of her body and left her breathless. She had worked for over 30 years at the same financial consulting firm, dedicating herself diligently, climbing rung by rung to a directorial position, always believing in the unshakable security her post offered. She saw herself as the epitome of success, an example of dedication and financial planning. But suddenly, that security evaporated, replaced by a terrifying void and a dizzying sense of uncertainty. Shortly before, the routine of constant hospital visits to care for her sick father had already consumed her savings, draining not only her bank account but also her energy and hope. Medical bills, which seemed endless and arrived daily in growing piles, accumulated like an insurmountable mountain, adding layers of dread to her already fragile situation. Each invoice was a cruel reminder of her helplessness in the face of uncontrollable expenses. Now, with her income source abruptly cut off and medical expenses swelling like an avalanche, panic began to set in, growing each day, turning nights into insomnia and days into a silent torment. The car, an elegant sedan that once represented her independence, status, and the fruit of years of hard work, was now advertised for sale on a random online classified site. Each click, each message from a potential buyer, was a painful reminder of her impending bankruptcy, a visible and humiliating symbol of how much she had lost. But the cruelest blow, the one that pierced her soul and made her weep silently in the middle of the night, came on a sunny day, ironically bright, when Marta, her voice choked with shame and her eyes welled up, had to call her daughter. Asking for help to buy her grandfather's medication was more than a humiliation. It was the final knife twist, the bitter recognition that control over her own life had completely slipped from her hands, leaving her at the mercy of circumstances she never imagined facing. The silent crisis of middle age, the paralyzing fear of not being able to start over, of becoming a burden, was knocking on the door of someone who had always been organized, meticulous, and prepared. Marta, a woman who meticulously planned every step of her financial and personal life with surgical precision, now found herself on the brink of an abyss, questioning everything she believed about security, stability, and her own future. The fall was real, and the impact devastating. It was a rainy Tuesday in Seattle, the gray sky reflecting John's state of mind. At 58, he stared at the pile of bills on his kitchen table, his eyes heavy with fatigue and worry, each bill feeling like an additional weight on his shoulders, slowly crushing him. Retirement, once a promised, tangible, and carefully planned future with charts and projections, now seemed a distant and unattainable dream, vanishing like smoke in the cold winter air. The company where he had worked for over 30 years, a lifetime dedicated to software engineering, had unexpectedly closed its doors, a victim of an impersonal corporate merger, leaving him unemployed and without a consistent plan B or any immediate prospect of re-employment. Anxiety was his new companion, a constant knot in his stomach that tightened with every email notification or phone ring, turning his routine into a roller coaster of apprehension and uncertainty. John, accustomed to a stable routine and a fixed salary that arrived punctually every month, never had to worry excessively about money. Therefore, he failed to identify the early signs of the financial storm approaching. The loss of income was the immediate catalyst for his crisis, but the root of the problem was deeper and more insidious. The gradual accumulation of credit card debt to cover small luxuries, and then, alarmingly, basic necessities. The growing reliance on special withdrawals and short-term loans to cover fixed expenses that once comfortably fit into his budget. And the constant feeling of putting out financial fires, living paycheck to paycheck, were clear signs that he, in his comfortable bubble of normalcy, an almost naive belief in his own security, systematically ignored. He believed he would figure it out, that the situation was temporary, that a new job would come along at any moment. After all, he had decades of experience. Recent data from the Federal Reserve is alarming and illustrates the fragility of many Americans' financial security. More than 40% of Americans do not have $400 available for an unexpected emergency, a statistic that highlights the vulnerability of a large part of the population. John, a man who always considered himself financially responsible, with modest investments and a theoretically secure future, now found himself part of this troubling statistic, despite a lifetime of hard work and having earned a good income. He wondered, with a bitter taste in his mouth, how he could have reached this point, how he let the red alert signs, which had been flashing for months, perhaps years, be ignored. His story was not just about job loss. It was about the financial blindness that many experience, the inability to recognize the fragility of their own security until it's too late, until debt becomes an uncontrollable monster and the future, an abyss of uncertainties with no map to the exit. In an elegant office in the heart of Manhattan, with a panoramic view of the city that never sleeps and symbolized the financial dynamism so many sought, who saw her 3-decade career crumble in minutes, was one of the most brutal triggers. In their early 50s, re-entering the job market can be an Herculean challenge, facing fierce competition from younger talent, the need for continuous technological skill updates, and the perception that experience is not always valued as it should be in a constantly evolving market. The transition from a consolidated career to the uncertainty of unemployment is not only a financial shock, but also a deep psychological one, shaking self-esteem and identity. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a renowned economist and authority on personal finance, accounting for an astonishing 66.5% of personal bankruptcies in the country, according to an in-depth study by the American Journal of Public Health. People like Marta's father, with chronic illnesses requiring continuous treatment, unexpected accidents, or health emergencies demanding expensive and prolonged surgeries, can quickly deplete a lifetime's savings, even with health insurance. The complexity of the American healthcare system, with its high deductibles, copays, and intricate insurance bureaucracy, turns illness into an unsustainable financial burden for many families, pushing them into debt and, consequently, into bankruptcy. Grimly analyzed data that confirmed her deepest concerns. She knew, through extensive research and practical experience with hundreds of desperate clients, that Marta and John's stories were not isolated cases, but rather a painful and alarming reflection of a growing trend in the United States. The leading causes of personal bankruptcy, especially among individuals aged 50 to 65, were multifaceted and often relentless, disarming even the most cautious and those who considered themselves immune to crisis. Unexpected unemployment, like what struck Marta. Furthermore, exorbitant medical expenses represented a devastating cause of financial ruin. Dr. Reed emphasized in her lectures, workshops, and publications that the lack of a robust emergency fund capable of covering at least 6 to 12 months of basic expenses to deal with unforeseen circumstances, the excessive and uncontrolled reliance on credit to maintain a lifestyle that was no longer compatible with income or to cover basic expenses when the income source was no longer sufficient. And the absence of long-term financial planning for retirement were common and often fatal traps. She explained that, in many cases, the financial education acquired in youth focused on saving for a down payment on a house, for children's college, or for a first car, did not adapt to the unique complexities and challenges of middle age. In this phase of life, health risks increase considerably. The burden of caring for aging parents can arise unexpectedly, and the proximity of retirement demands a much more aggressive approach to saving and investing, considering longevity and inflation. The Economist saw a glaring gap in how people prepared for financial unexpected events, especially as they aged, and options for recovery seemed to diminish drastically. Complacency, often disguised as stability and security based on a solid career, was the silent enemy that eroded the financial foundation of thousands of American families, leaving them vulnerable to any economic or personal turbulence, transforming the American dream into a financial nightmare. In Ohio, the story of Sarah, a 55-year-old teacher, echoed Marta as pain and despair when an unexpected divorce left her with a mountain of debt and an uncertain future. Her house, once a warm home full of memories, now seemed like a bottomless pit of expenses, a constant reminder of her precarious situation and the loss of her former status. Her recovery journey, raw and honest, shared on a popular personal finance podcast, inspired thousands of listeners who found themselves in similar situations, offering a glimmer of hope where there was only darkness and helplessness before. Sarah, initially paralyzed by shock, shame, and emotional overload, took time to take the first step. However, with the invaluable help of a friend who encouraged her to seek knowledge and face reality, she found the spark she needed to start acting in Dave Ramsey's debt snowball method. She began by paying off the smallest debts first, a credit card with a $1,500 balance and sky-high interest, which was suffocating her, to create a sense of victory and gain psychological momentum. Each debt paid off, no matter how small, was an immense relief, a small liberation from the burden, and it propelled her to continue, strengthening her determination with each step. With an ironclad determination she didn't know she possessed, Sarah made drastic cuts to her spending, eliminating unnecessary streaming subscriptions, reducing leisure expenses to almost zero, swapping expensive restaurants for picnics in the park, and renegotiating each of her bills, from her cell phone plan to her car insurance, always seeking the most economical options. She learned to cook at home with simple ingredients, to plan meals, and to create a strict and detailed budget, tracking every penny that came in and went out of her account, controlling every expense with a precision she never had before. This relentless discipline, which once seemed impossible and restrictive, became her new routine and, paradoxically, her greatest source of empowerment. Furthermore, with the wisdom and support of a certified financial counselor, someone who helped her see the complete picture of her situation impartially and to draw up a realistic and achievable plan, tailored to her specific needs, Sarah managed to renegotiate the abusive interest rates on her credit cards. The counselor also guided her to seek a non-profit credit counseling organization, which acted as a crucial and effective bridge between her and her creditors, securing more favorable payment terms and reducing the incessant pressure of daily, overwhelming collection calls. In just 6 months of concentrated effort and daily sacrifices, Sarah had paid off a $10,000 credit card debt, an achievement that seemed absolutely impossible and overwhelming at the beginning of her journey. Her story clearly demonstrated that financial recovery, although arduous and requiring significant sacrifices, was completely possible with discipline, a well-structured plan, and the application of proven strategies. Sarah's experience, though painful in its essence and marked by many tears, became a beacon of hope for many, showing that an action plan, even if it seems small and insignificant at first, can be the catalyst for a complete and transformative turnaround in one's financial life, leading to freedom and peace of mind. Michael, a 52-year-old former advertising executive in Chicago, learned the hard way about the dangers of financial complacency and the vital importance of continuous education in the field. Years earlier, at the peak of his career, enjoying an enviable salary and a luxurious lifestyle, he had invested heavily in tech stocks during the infamous dot-com bubble. Following market fervor and promises of quick profits, without due diligence or the necessary diversification of his portfolio, he felt invincible, a genius investor. When the bubble spectacularly and violently burst in 2000, he lost a large part of his life savings, including his children's college fund, a devastating financial blow that left him in shock and on the brink of ruin. After the personal and financial crisis that forced him to reevaluate his entire life, Michael decided he would never again be caught off guard. He dove headfirst into financial education, turning his pain into relentless motivation. He spent months reading dozens of books on long-term investments, retirement planning, debt management, and personal budgeting. He attended online workshops with renowned experts and sought mentorship from experienced professionals who helped him understand not only the mistakes he had made, but also the solid principles of good financial management. In this intensive self-learning process, he discovered that many of the financial mistakes made in middle age were painfully common, realizing that even small amounts, when invested consistently and patiently over decades, can generate significant returns over time, turning modest contributions into fortunes. He also understood the importance of reviewing his financial plan annually, adjusting it to changes in his life, in the market, and in his own needs and goals. In his new lectures, articles for local newspapers, and finance blogs, he became a fervent advocate for continuous financial education, especially for those in their 50s. Michael argued that while the window of time to accumulate wealth may be shorter than in youth, there is still time to correct course, learn from mistakes, and make smarter financial decisions. In your 50s, you can no longer afford to make costly mistakes or remain ignorant about best financial practices. Michael's experience reinforced a universal and undeniable truth. Knowledge is the first and most powerful line of defense against bankruptcy and financial insecurity, allowing one to navigate life's complexities with greater confidence, resilience, and the ability to build a more secure and peaceful future, even after a great loss, but also avoidable with knowledge and discipline. The lack of investment diversification, putting all eggs in one basket, as he did with tech stocks, or investing only in a single asset class, was a primary and dangerous error. The absence of a robust emergency fund, capable of covering at least 6 to 12 months of expenses to deal with unforeseen events like a layoff, a medical emergency, or an unexpected home repair, was another critical common flaw. And finally, the underestimation of rising healthcare costs in retirement, which can quickly erode a lifetime's savings, was also a blind spot for many who failed to prepare for the expenses of medications and more expensive health plans in old age. Michael learned about the power of compound interest in long-term investments. In Detroit, a city that has seen its share of economic ups and downs, David, a 56-year-old mechanical engineer, found himself at a painful crossroads. What was once just a weekend passion, a creative escape in his home garage, transformed into a profitable business. David began selling custom-made furniture, such as unique coffee tables, cutting boards with exclusive designs, and decorative pieces that captured the essence of woodworking art on online platforms like Etsy and at local craft fairs. He invested in a simple but professional website and learned to use social media and digital marketing to promote his work and reach a wider audience. This extra income, though modest at first, was the foundation for rebuilding his financial security, allowing him to cover basic expenses and begin to reverse the impact of the layoff. After the massive restructuring of his former company in the automotive industry, where he had worked for over 3 decades, he was laid off, losing the job that had accompanied him throughout his adult life and was the foundation of his financial security. The initial shock was immense, a crushing mixture of anger, frustration, despair, and a paralyzing fear of the unknown. But David knew he couldn't afford to stand still, lamenting his fate. He realized he needed to reinvent his financial approach and seek new avenues to supplement his income, or his retirement plan, which seemed so solid, would completely collapse. It was then that he turned to his long-standing hobby, woodworking. In parallel, David, with the wise guidance of a financial advisor he specifically hired to help him organize his finances after the layoff, began to invest smartly and strategically. He opted for a conservative investment plan, focusing on low-risk bonds and exchange-traded funds that replicated the performance of broad market segments, offering inherent diversification and lower management costs compared to actively managed investment funds. He learned that it was not too late to start investing, even with limited initial capital, and that consistency in contributions, even if small, could make a significant difference over time, leveraging the power of compound interest. He also explored the possibility of investing in income-generating real estate, buying a small property to rent out, generating a source of passive income. Furthermore, David explored the vast world of the gig economy. With his extensive experience and technical knowledge as a mechanical engineer, he began consulting for small businesses and startups in the manufacturing sector, offering his expertise on specific projects and process optimization. He registered on freelancing platforms and professional networking sites, finding projects that perfectly matched his specialty and experience. This flexibility and the ability to work on multiple projects simultaneously allowed him to generate significant income without the constraints of a traditional full-time job, filling the gaps left by his layoff. David's story exemplifies how creativity, adaptability, and a willingness to learn new skills and monetize them can generate new income streams and drive financial recovery, even when the doors of traditional employment seem definitively closed. He proved that personal innovation and the pursuit of alternative opportunities are essential to building a resilient and prosperous financial future, even after great adversity, truly turning lemons into financial lemonade.